Today's video is brought to you by creativesdothis.com. The last confirmed proof of life of Rebecca Reusch was a selfie. She just sent it to a friend on Snapchat, standing alone in a hallway. She was wearing jeans, a pink plush fleecy jacket, and a hoodie with the word "Rap Monster" written across the back. To look at her, you'd think she was ready for school. Everything was good to go for another normal day. But when her mother tried to call her just minutes later, the phone just rang through to voicemail. And then, Rebecca never arrived at class that day. And after school, she never came home. There were no witnesses, no CCTV, no body. Were only the faint digital breadcrumbs of a bright and funny girl who seemingly just vanished from her sister's house. The very same house where her brother-in-law, the only adult home that morning, insists that he was fast asleep the whole time. But police, well, they're not too sure about him. There are many questions in this video that I want to ask you, but I'll start with this. Do you think Rebecca ever left home alive? By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. You are now in the home of rare and unseen true crime cases, of unsolved and unexplained mysteries, as well as other things that you may later regret knowing. Please do join the Dark Case family now by subscribing and then double checking that those notifications are turned on. And guys, I can't believe I've actually got to say this, but I am human, so yeah, this is the place where we're at now. Today's video is actually sponsored by my own new business. It's called Creatives Do This, and it's by creatives and for creatives. And the best way that you can support me right now is by simply clicking the link down below and joining the newsletter. If you have a creative bone in your body, it will definitely change your life. And now for today's silly little question. Are you okay today? Seriously, everyone talk it through and be kind down in the comments. Dark Case family, assemble. Now, there are a lot of German words and names in this one, so bear with me and I really will try my best. I also want to say that any news footage or interviews in this video, they've been translated using a service called HeyGen, so I believe that the translations are accurate, but I can't totally guarantee that. Anyway, right, let's open up today's Dark Case and jump right in. Rebecca Reusch was the youngest of 3 daughters. She was born on September 21st, 2003, and she was 15 years old when she was last seen. She lived with her parents, Bridget and Bernard Reusch, and they lived in Britz, a quiet residential district in the Berlin borough of Neukölln. Her older sisters, Jessica and Vivian, they had already moved out and they were raising young children of their own. Despite the age gap, the 3 sisters stayed close, often spending time together and around each other's houses. And it was that closeness that brought Rebecca to her sister Jessica's house on the very night before she disappeared. To outsiders, Rebecca might have seemed like any other girl. But as in all of these cases, we need to remember that she was someone's person. She was real and she was loved. And she still is. Those who knew her described her as expressive, loyal and funny. Someone who loved her family and doted on her nieces and nephews. She had a passion for K-pop, especially BTS. If for some reason you don't know, K-pop is like South Korean pop music. Rebecca's room was covered in posters, and her wardrobe included hoodies and accessories bearing the names of her favourite idols. Idols, by the way, are just what they call pop stars in South Korea. The nickname Becky was how her friends and family normally referred to her. She adored animals and took pride in her appearance, often experimenting with filters and editing apps on Instagram, though this would later become a point of controversy. But we will get to that later. She went to the Walter Gropius School, a secondary school in Gropiusstadt, and she was a 10th grade student at the time that she was last seen. Teachers described her as punctual and engaged. On Sunday, February the 17th, 2019, Rebecca asked if she could sleep over at her sister Jessica's house. Jessica was 27 at the time, and she too lived in the Berlin neighborhood of Britz. with her husband Florian and their 2-year-old daughter. So on that final night, sister Jessica was home with Rebecca as well as the toddler, but her partner Florian had gone to a party with colleagues. Rebecca planned to sleep on the living room sofa and then just head straight out to school the next morning. To the family, everything so far seemed normal. A teenage girl spending the night with her sister and niece, just a few blocks from home. On February the 18th, 2019, the day that she failed to show up, she was expected in class after a rare late start of the school day at 9:50 a.m. That small scheduling detail will become one of many key pieces in the timeline of this case. Anyway, at 9:40 a.m, Rebecca failed to show up for school as planned. By the afternoon, she still hadn't come home. So of course, her parents reported her missing, and within just a few days, the Berlin police would announce that they were no longer treating this as a missing persons case, that what had happened to Rebecca was likely a homicide. And from that point forward, all eyes turned to the one person who had been there with her that morning, brother-in-law, Florian. Police believe that if anything happened to Rebecca Reusch, it must have happened between 7 and 8 a.m. on the morning of February the 18th, 2019. This narrow 60-minute window is now considered to be the heart of the case. So just to nail this home so we can think about this clearly, let's look at all the timings that we know. At exactly 7 a.m, sister Jessica Reusch, she left her home with her 2-year-old daughter and then went to work. And so from that moment onwards, the only people in the house were Rebecca, who was presumed to be asleep on the couch, and her brother-in-law, Florian, a man who had just returned home from a party less than 2 hours earlier. Florian claimed that he went to bed and then fell asleep during that hour. And then at 7:15 a.m, Rebecca's mother called her. The phone rang but with no answer. Sometime between 7 a.m. and 7:46 a.m, the Snapchat photo was seemingly taken and sent from Rebecca's phone to a friend. That image is believed to have been captured inside Jessica's house, and it's also believed to be the last verifiable sign of life. At 7:46 a.m, Rebecca's mobile phone briefly connected to the home Wi-Fi network, but after that moment there was nothing. There were no outgoing messages, no tracking data, no confirmed sightings. It wouldn't be until 8:15 a.m. that Snapchat message was opened by Rebecca's friend. At 8:36 a.m, Rebecca's mother sent her that WhatsApp message which was shown as delivered, meaning that the phone was capable of receiving data, but we don't know if it was on the home network or somewhere else. So just a note about this, from what I can gather, Rebecca must have either run out of mobile data, which I don't think is unusual, especially not back in 2019 to not have unlimited data, or of course there could have been poor 3G or 4G signal in her sister's home. Does it mean that Rebecca was still alive at 8:36 or not? Or was her phone connecting to somewhere else other than her sister's home? And could that be because someone had taken it with them? When the case was handed in to the Homicide Division just days later, investigators publicly and concerningly stated, "We do not believe Rebecca ever left the house alive." And so at this time, the prime suspect and the only person in the house with Rebecca that morning was, of course, Florian. However, at that time, police had no physical evidence. I want to give you some more background about Rebecca's school life. It's definitely worth mentioning to gain more understanding about her possible mindset, because in the days leading up to her disappearance, Rebecca appeared outwardly to be her usual self, but a closer look at her school life revealed something more complicated. Though described by family and friends as cheerful and thoughtful, Rebecca had also been struggling with bullying at school. Her father also later confirmed that his daughter was not happy in her current school environment. She had even recently expressed a desire to switch schools and to complete her diploma elsewhere. She even deleted most of her Instagram photos after a conflict with classmates, a move that her father connected directly to issues with her peers. In another interview, one of Rebecca's friends said that she was acting a bit weird on the day before her disappearance. They also said that she was unusually quiet and not active on social media, whereas normally she was very engaged. This quietness extended into Sunday, at which point she reportedly told a friend that she was with her sister, but she still didn't post or interact as usual. It's also worth mentioning that the police have said that they do not believe Rebecca did anything to herself, which I think is definitely worth bearing in mind. But let's go back more to the timeline of the morning in question, because things don't seem to be adding up. On the morning of Rebecca's disappearance, a camera on the A12 motorway, about 50 kilometers southeast of Berlin, it captured a raspberry red Renault Twingo, which is a car in case those words just sound random, and that car belonged to Florian. The first image was taken at 10:47 a.m., around 3 hours after Rebecca was last heard from. The vehicle was heading east towards Frankfurt, and possibly towards the Polish border. A second image of the same vehicle appeared the next night, which will be February the 19th at 10:39 p.m. Once again, it was travelling the same stretch of highway. Police later confirmed that only Florian had access to the car during those times. However, he gave no clear explanation for either of his journeys, which I find confusing and is obviously a huge red flag. Investigators also said that his statements about the trips were inconsistent and that they contradicted GPS and number plate recognition data. He also failed to provide a verifiable reason for why he went out that way twice, both trips unaccounted for, both through sparsely populated areas known for forests, lakes, and for having few possible witnesses. And then came possibly the most chilling detail. A forensic analysis of the car, it revealed long, light-coloured hairs, potentially a match for Rebecca. It also contained fibres from a missing purple fleece blanket that had belonged to Rebecca. That blanket was one of several items that disappeared along with Rebecca, an item that was also visible in some of her Instagram posts. However, obvious initial excitement over these findings cooled off, because later testing showed that the hair may have belonged to Jessica, who was of course Rebecca's sister, who had a similar length and colour of hair. The blanket fibres could also not definitively be linked to a crime. Still though, the movements of the Twingo remained rightly suspicious. And you can add to that suspicion, a witness had later told police she had seen a vehicle matching Florian's Twingo, and it had been parked near a wooded area in Kummersdorf on the very day that Rebecca disappeared. She recalled seeing a man wearing a baseball cap, walking out of the woods and constantly looking around. Another pair of witnesses, two horseback riders, they said that they saw a similar man around midday looking nervous and out of place. When Florian told police that he had been asleep between 7 and 9 a.m. on the morning that Rebecca vanished, that became a central point in his defense. But in 2021, new forensic data would reveal a problem with that story. According to investigators, digital records recovered from Florian's Google account showed that he had been browsing explicit content during the exact window that he claimed to be asleep. More specifically, the data indicated searches and viewing history that was related to adult material surrounding pressure applied to the neck. The available timestamps pointed directly to the morning of February the 18th. So for detectives, this wasn't simply a disturbing find. It directly contradicted his alibi of being asleep. Florian had access to the internet, he was awake, he was online. And so with this new evidence, in April of 2023, years after the initial disappearance, police conducted a fresh search of the home where Rebecca had last been seen. They even brought in acoustic measurement equipment. This was to test the sound transmission between rooms, possibly trying to determine what someone in one part of the house could hear if something happened elsewhere. So for instance, could someone have broken in, done something to Rebecca, whilst Florian was just upstairs on his phone and never heard anything? During that search, investigators also seized the bathrobe. It reportedly had a missing belt. To this day, it has not been confirmed whether the belt is definitely connected to Rebecca's disappearance, but authorities clearly considered it significant enough to warrant mention in subsequent reports. So I mean, the content that he was watching, plus a possible weapon that's now missing, I don't know, it's not looking too good. However, Rebecca's mother, Bridget, she would later dismiss these speculations because she explained that the belt had been used to pull her granddaughter's toy car around, and then it was simply thrown away when it got dirty. Still, it was yet another strange detail in a case where almost nothing made sense. Investigators believed that Rebecca's body may have been hidden and then possibly transported, and this was done using items from the home. The blanket, the missing bathrobe belt, and possibly the pink Twingo that kept on pinging the CCTV. Police also continued to pursue digital leads. In 2020, law enforcement requested international assistance in order to access cloud data stored by Google. When those records were returned in 2021, it became even more clear that Florian's internet activity did not align with his account of the morning events. All of this deepened suspicions that something had happened inside that house, and that Florian may have used the next 48 hours to cover it up. But despite those suspicions, there was no forensic evidence of violence that was ever found inside that home. But all of the evidence so far left investigators with a theory that they did believe, but they just couldn't prove it definitively. From the earliest days of the investigation, Berlin police publicly identified Florian as their sole suspect. But inside the Reusch family, that suspicion sparked something entirely different, being division. Rebecca's parents, Bridget and Bernd, they refused to believe that their son-in-law could have harmed their daughter. They saw Florian not only as Jessica's husband, but as a loving father and a kind, loyal member of their extended family. In interview after interview, they held firm. Rebecca's mother said that she could feel that her daughter was still alive, and she insisted that the real explanation must have had nothing to do with Florian, even after Florian had been arrested 2 separate times. Mother Bridget said, "For Becky, he was like a big brother, so warm and affectionate." Rebecca's other sister, Vivian, also defended Florian. She called him funny and trustworthy. The family's loyalty never wavered, and that loyalty has become its own focal point in this story. Criminologists and former homicide investigators began to question the family's role in the public search. Christian Matzdorf, a Berlin professor of forensic science and former state police officer, said, "The family continues to present a very unified front outwardly. In terms of public perception, this has caused disturbance, including among investigators." He also criticized the now infamous Instagram image used in the search for Rebecca. It was a heavily filtered selfie, which gave Rebecca a highly stylized appearance. They were searching for a girl who does not actually exist with that appearance, Matzdorf noted, adding, "It was a strange choice for a missing persons case." That photo was reportedly provided by the family early on in the search. And although other images were later released, it still remained the primary image that was shared across German media. I do want to mention the filters being used by Rebecca quickly, especially when we consider the fact that she was getting hassled at school. So maybe she did just want to appear as someone else online. Maybe she wanted escapism. Over the years, tensions between police and the Reusch family only grew. Investigators publicly complained about a lack of cooperation. The family, in turn, accused police of becoming fixated on Florian, even to the exclusion of other leads. Rebecca's father once said in an interview, "This whole thing is connected to something else, which I'm not allowed to say." And obviously, theories quickly emerged around that quote, including possible ties to illicit substance activity, to general secrecy, and to suspicion that Florian's unexplained trips to the Polish border had nothing to do with Rebecca at all, but instead to some other darker second life. And that quote really does get me thinking. I mean, why is Rebecca's own father not just saying what needs to be said here? Why be cryptic? But, of course, it could be because of an ongoing investigation, but saying something like that in a situation like this is not going to help anyone to gain clarity in this situation, in my opinion. But even with all of this speculation, the case remained open, and Rebecca was still missing. Despite the official theory that Rebecca never left the house alive, not everyone agrees. There have been multiple reported sightings of Rebecca on the day that she disappeared, but frustratingly none of these have ever been confirmed. One witness claimed that she saw a girl matching Rebecca's description, walking down the street near Jessica's house later that morning. Oddly, she recalled the girl carrying a blanket, even though the ground was damp and unsuitable for a picnic. But when weather data from that day was reviewed, it showed that no rain had fallen. This obviously contradicted the idea that the ground was wet, which kind of makes this whole sighting questionable. Another witness reported seeing Rebecca at a bus stop nearby, while others claimed that she had been spotted riding a 171 bus. These tips were taken seriously, and police even reviewed surveillance footage from bus stops and transport hubs in the area, but they were unable to confirm any of these sightings. On the day that she disappeared, Monday the 18th of February, a 10-year-old student at her school reportedly witnessed a confrontation involving Rebecca, and according to his account, Rebecca was seen in an argument with a group of boys at 4 p.m, and she may have even been physically detained, grabbed or blocked from leaving during that incident. This sighting obviously occurs hours after she was already reported missing, and it does add some fuel to the theory that Rebecca may have left the house alive after all. The idea that Rebecca left their sister's home voluntarily has also gained traction online. Her family suggested that she may have been planning a fan event, or some kind of tribute event connected to the K-pop band BTS, and kind of weirdly on February the 18th, obviously the day she vanished, that happens to be the birthday of BTS band member J-Hope. Rebecca did have her Fujifilm Instax camera with her, as well as a purple blanket when she disappeared. So did she want to get a picture of something special? And could it possibly have been BTS themed? Because purple is the band's colour. I mean, it does kind of make sense, but maybe she just had the blanket with her to keep warm at school. We don't know. Mother Bridget believed that she might have been planning to take photos before school, possibly just content to post online later. That theory, however, relies heavily on the assumption that Rebecca left the house on her own, and that she had the camera and blanket with her, and she just didn't tell anyone she was doing this. Then there was the online boy. Rebecca had mentioned a guy, possibly named Max or Maxie, someone that she'd been chatting and reportedly flirting with on social media. Her mother said that she warned Rebecca not to meet him alone, and Rebecca had promised that she wouldn't do that. But to make things really odd here, the boys' social media accounts were deleted after Rebecca went missing, and this prompted even more suspicion around this information. Police, however, followed up on the lead, tracked the boy down, and eventually ruled him out. Some followers of this case, though, remain unconvinced. They point to the timing of the account deletion and the lack of public information available about the boy as signs that something more may have happened there. But frustratingly, just like all the frustrations in this case, we don't know. Another strange development in the case. In 2020, the family received an anonymous photo via Instagram, and it was of a girl who looked exactly like Rebecca. That image was traced to an adult worker platform, which was obviously concerning, but investigators believe that it may have just been stolen from social media and misused. Still, it was another eerie moment in a case with no closure, and I don't know, I just don't think you can rule out trafficking in any situation anymore. Things are crazy out there. Between 2019 and 2025, more than 3,000 tips from the public were submitted in the search for Rebecca. Law enforcement followed up on any that seemed viable. It took them across forests, lakes, abandoned wells, and rural properties. Most of these searches focused on one specific area, the A12 motorway corridor southeast of Berlin. This route was significant for one reason: Florian's unexplained trips towards the Polish border, trips that were captured on camera on both February the 18th and 19th. Large-scale search efforts began just weeks after Rebecca vanished, and they really did throw everything at it: cadaver dogs, helicopters, sonar-equipped dive teams, as well as ground-penetrating radar were all deployed. Police combed through pretty much anywhere that Florian would have passed through on his drives. And I just want to reiterate this too. A witness had seen a raspberry red car in a forest clearing, and also those two horseback riders described seeing a conspicuous man, and they all said that he was looking nervous near the edge of the woods, and nothing was recovered. And I'm just thinking here, but do you think it's possible that on one journey he dumped Rebecca, and on a second journey he picked her up and moved her somewhere else? Allegedly, just a theory, whoever the man was. The fact nothing was recovered just makes it all... The fact that nothing was recovered really just makes it stranger. By spring of 2019, the search was paused due to lack of results. But it didn't stay paused for too long. This case just won't go away. Years later, in October of 2025, police conducted a massive search operation at properties that actually belonged to Florian's grandparents in the Brandenburg region, specifically near Tosch and Reitz-Neuendorf. This wasn't just a routine sweep either. There were over 100 officers, including those from the Federal Criminal Police Office, or BKA. And again, they really just threw all the resources at it. Dogs, excavators, helicopters, everything.
Lindenberg, Tauscher municipality, southeast of Berlin. A major operation involving police and forensic technicians, supported by specialists from the Federal Criminal Police Office. On the property belonging to the suspect's grandmother, they search using ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs. An excavator begins to dig up the ground. Apparently, investigators still hope to be able to solve the suspected murder, around 6.5 years after Rebecca's disappearance.
At that time, the property had not yet been searched. Or rather, back then, the ground was not dug up to look for evidence. Now, as part of the investigation, new leads have emerged suggesting that the body may have at least temporarily been brought to this property. These findings are now being pursued.
Their goal was to either find Rebecca's remains, or even just her missing belongings from that day. That operation was the most advanced to date, and according to officials, it was based on indications that the suspect may have temporarily hidden a body and/or the missing items at one of those properties. So far, police have not confirmed whether anything was recovered during those digs, but they also haven't ruled out Florian, even after 6 years, even after arresting him twice. Back in Berlin, another perplexing clue surfaced. A surveillance video now showed Florian's car leaving his driveway at 7:24 a.m. This was on the morning that Rebecca vanished. He then returned just 46 minutes later. That places the car outside the home during the exact hour that police believe Rebecca disappeared. What it doesn't show is who was driving and what was or wasn't in the trunk of the car. So really what we are left with is a 24-minute gap, where Florian was home alone with Rebecca, then he left and returned back just after 8 a.m, where he then looked at the adult material on his phone. And then this is just a theory or an opinion, but he could have been reliving what he had just done, maybe, allegedly. I just want to say that I have covered over 400 cases here, and it's not unusual for people to self-gratify after the event in question, like it's actually weirdly common. More than 6 years have now passed since Rebecca Reusch was last seen. This case, though, remains one of Germany's most polarizing and publicly debated mysteries. It's a case with no forensic evidence of violence, no signs of even digital life after 7:46 a.m, no recovered body, and no confessions. But, despite that, authorities continue to maintain that Florian is their only suspect. He was arrested twice, then released twice. Firstly due to lack of evidence, and later after an appeal found that their suspicion no longer met the legal standard for pre-trial detention. But he was never formally cleared. Even years later, prosecutors described the suspicion against him as unchanged. Public opinion remains divided. Many believe that Florian is guilty, citing the contradictory statements like the internet activity, and obviously those unexplained trips. But others point to the same holes in the case as signs of something else, perhaps a wrongful focus, a missed alternative scenario, an investigative tunnel vision that may have overlooked other possibilities. I mean, it's really saying something that investigators found no evidence of foul play inside the house, yet they still remain convinced that Florian is their only suspect. Even seasoned homicide experts have expressed frustration with this case. One former investigator said, "We know that families are supposed to be places of safety, but sometimes there's more violence in the family than in the mafia." Despite everything, the Reusch family still believes that Rebecca is alive. They hold celebrations on her birthday. They release balloons in her honor. They maintain her memory online and in interviews. And they continue to defend Florian. To this day, nobody has been charged. Nobody has confessed. And Rebecca, or Becky, she remains missing. Let me know your thoughts and theories down in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you have to say. I mean, you never know, you could even somehow crack the case. And remember to please support my new business, creativesdothis.com. All you have to do is to join a newsletter by clicking the link down below. And if you even have a single creative or artistic bone in your body, then it really could change your life. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.